voice. And that will keep it on your screen. So if you have any, we'll remind as people come in, we'll give people a little reminder. We have Giuseppe with us today, back on the camera duties. He's been working on Sundays, so we've been missing him. But there he is. There's Giuseppe and Krystal and Coco. We have Coco with us today. It's a very special day with everybody here. The whole family's here. Yes. Oh, and Carrie, yeah, thanks for reminding me. I forgot to say that. If you're on an iPhone and an iPad, you can just double tap Krystal's image and it will stay on your phone. Carrie, you're the greatest. We love you. I'm glad you were. I thought maybe you weren't going to be able to be here today, so we're glad to have you. So we will give another second or two to get everybody in here. Has anybody been to the Moulin Rouge? I have not gone inside. I've kind of avoided it because it's pretty touristy and it's extremely expensive. I think that's the bigger thing, is it is extremely expensive from everything I've heard. But I do need to go in sometimes because, you have to go. It's a Parisian staple. I think you have to go check it out. Give everybody a second here. Hi, Cheryl. I see Cheryl. I see a few people on I only see a few little pictures. And Karen, I turned my video off at the start just so that it doesn't get confusing, so that you, if you hear me talking, all of a sudden the screen goes dark, to make sure to get back over to Krystal, because you definitely, of course, you want to see Paris as much as all the great history and stuff, but we definitely want to see it since we can't be there yet. But just let one or two more people in. Again, just a reminder to click on Krystal's image in the top right, pin it to your screen. We do record them, so if you have any issues along the way, I posted in the Facebook event right afterwards. So it looks like I think we have most people here, so we'll go ahead and get started. We're of course looking at the infamous Moulin Rouge. Oh, Monica, yeah, we're just getting started, just this second, no worries. But we're looking at the Moulin Rouge, of course. This was opened the same year that the Eiffel Tower was opened. And it is, became quite the Parisian staple here in Paris. Sorry, we're just letting a couple more people in. I need some sort of command central here going on. So it was opened in 1889 by Charles Zidier and Joseph Euler. The two of them had actually opened a few other places in Paris, including the Olympia, the concert venue that is pretty historic as well. Basically, like every musician you've ever known has played through there, including the Beatles before they came to America. But that's on a side note. We'll have to go by there someday. But this was at the time, it was the height of the Belle Epoque. So at the Belle Epoque, everything, they survived the siege of Paris. They didn't even know it, but World War I was around the corner. So this was at a period of time where everything was fantastic and fun and beautiful and amazing. And I think maybe we're going to have that again when we get through all this too. I think we'll have a second Belle Epoque. But the Moulin Rouge, it was Montmartre had become the place of a lot of the artists had been living there because it was so cheap. So it ended up kind of having this whole cultural and nightlife and art and everything else was kind of expanding there at that time because it was so much cheaper to live there, than it was. This was this was like basically, it was to the north of Paris, and it was, far from what we know of the center of Paris today. So they all decided to come up here. We have this nice gentleman standing right in front of us. But at the time, it also became very famous because of one amazing, another one of my favorite painters, Toulouse-Lautrec. He, of course, made this very famous. But Charles had found at the time that he had the Olympia, and they wanted to open in another place. At the time, there was the way that women were depicted at the time. They were always, you only saw basically scantily clad or naked ladies in paintings, and it was only in like paintings that had like a religious, it was only okay if they were allegorical or religious. And so, Manet painted Olympia, and Déjeuner-sur-l'Herbe in 1863 freaked out all of Paris because here was a woman that was depicted as a woman, naked, and not as, this allegorical. So this was, I'm not really sure why there's such a huge difference in naked ladies and naked lady, but that's, at the time it was a pretty big deal. They freaked out. So the two owners decided that they wanted to open a place that was going to be, it was first going to be the women's first palace. And so the show was gold and women's legs is what they called it. And it was an instant success, of course, with many men coming at the time. It wasn't really, women couldn't really go unless they were going with a man, but it became very, very, very popular right from the very beginning. Every evening at 10 p.m. they would have a show featuring all of these dancers and can dancers, and many of the stars at the time would go. You'd have the artists going, and of course Toulouse-Lautrec, and you would also have a bunch of every celebrity in Paris at the time. It was the thing to do. Jane Avril, one of the dancers, she was spotted at a bal musette right before they opened by Charles, and he asked her to come dance for her at the Moulin Rouge. She had suffered, we did a podcast episode about her, and I'll link that in the Facebook event afterwards if you haven't listened to it, on La Vie Creative, Paris History of Eka Hemingway. She had what they called St. Vincent's disease, and it was a form of epilepsy, and so it would cause her to make these kind of crazy jerky movements. At first she didn't like it, but then it eventually became her signature. So she had these crazy jerky movements, and if you look at some of the paintings done by Toulouse-Lautrec of her, you definitely, once you know that, you look at her painting, his paintings, and you really you could see what he was, what he was depicting of her. But she ended up becoming extremely famous because of this. She also was she was a little bit more demure than a lot of the other women on stage, but underneath her flow of lots of layers in her skirts when they were doing the can, she always wore red panties. So she had her little things. Anything that's red is fantastic. But she's a really incredibly interesting person. She ended up taking the can to London. So she brought the can to England. They had never seen that before. So she's a really interesting character. So if you haven't listened to that episode, definitely check it out. Toulouse-Lautrec, of course, sat there, and he would paint scenes of the Moulin Rouge and the dancers, and he became very close with them. He became close friends with Jane as well. On February 27th, 1915, the Moulin Rouge was destroyed by a fire. And it wasn't rebuilt until 1921, of course, a few years after World War I had ended. In 1952, there's a fantastic movie, you could find it. It's called The Moulin Rouge. It's by John Huston. Jose Ferrer, who is, I think, who is he? Isn't he George Clooney's? I think he would be George Clooney's uncle or some by marriage. He plays Toulouse-Lautrec. It's a old black and white movie. It's absolutely fantastic. So check that out. But Jane Avril, another famous movie, The Moulin Rouge, of course, with Nicole Kidman. That character is based loosely on Jane. So it's definitely something to go check out. Another fun thing about the Moulin Rouge, it's one of the largest champagne customers in the world, at almost 400,000 bottles a year that they go through. So that's a lot of champers over there at the Moulin Rouge. But it's used to have, if you watch the Moulin Rouge with Nicole Kidman movie, you see the large elephant. There was actually an elephant there, not a real one, way back when, but when the fire, it was all destroyed. He named it the Moulin Rouge, which is the red windmill, because on the street they were going to go up here in a second, Rue Le Pic, there was over 20 different windmills that just lined this street that went all the way up to Montmartre. So that's why they gave it that name. And it was one of the very first buildings in the entire city of Paris that was lit up. He had an idea to light it all up in red so it could be seen from far and wide. And it was one of the very first buildings in Paris to have lighting on the facade. we'll see how Coco, Coco's keeping an eye on us. Hopefully all these places get opened up again soon. We can all get back there, spend our money that they desperately, all these venues and everyone else desperately needs. And we would probably all love to spend a moment anywhere drinking some of that champagne that they go through in a year. And we're gonna go right around the corner. We're gonna go Rue Le Pic. And right on the very first corner, the street itself was named for General Louis Le Pic. He was a general for Napoleon. He had 5 children. Each one of them had Napoleon in their name. So I guess that's a good way to get your street named after him. But the right below where we are right now at number 1, this is Krystal, our director. Is that a door? The poor beat up door doesn't even have a little handle or anything on it.
Middle.
In this building, Jules Paskin lived. He was an artist. He was born in Bucharest in 1892. Growing up, as he was growing up as a teenager, he had quite a few affairs with, one second here. He had quite a few affairs with the women, the ladies of the brothels and the madams of the brothels, and his family was horrified by his behavior. So they sent him off. He left and went off to Paris. He was an artist as well. He arrived on Christmas Eve, 1905, and he changed his last name because Apollinaire had told him that he probably should change his last name just because his name wasn't really getting a lot of, didn't really have a good connotation to his name. And he wasn't very, he had a lot of things that followed him with his name. So he changed his name. And he moved to Montmartre at first, where he lived and worked with a lot of the German artists. And in September 1907, he moved to that location that we just saw with Hermine David. She was a painter as well. At the same time, he also had a relationship with another woman named Lucy Krog. In 1909, he moved to 49 Rue Gabrielle, which is just a few doors down from our fantastic camera crew. But in 1914, he left for the US since Bulgaria and France were hostiles towards each other, and Hermione left with him. He ended up coming back to France, and Berthe Whitewille, who was an amazing woman that had one of the first galleries in Paris. We have an episode coming up about her in a couple of weeks. But he ended up selling some of his art to her. Hemingway mentioned him in A Movable Feast as well. In the chapter Pasquin at the Dome, he said in the spring of 1924, they called him the Prince of Montparnasse, and he was always drunk, and he always came in with quite a few girls. On June 2nd, 1930, the same day an exhibition of his work, like his first exhibition of all of his work, opened, he ended up killing himself. There was a lot too much alcohol and very, very depressed. And so unfortunately on the day his exhibit opened, he decided to end it. So Rue Le Pic, there's quite a few people out. Rue Le Pic is, well, usually there's quite a few more because we're coming up here on the corner to a special location. Everybody that's seen the movie Amelie is going to definitely notice. I was watching it a little bit last night. I realized I don't think I'd watched it in a couple years. So I was watching it last night, and it was fun to see the street. They used a lot of stuff on this street in filming. The filmmaker just basically pointed the camera and things on the street and used different businesses. And but of course we have right here the Café de Dumoulin. This is where Amelie worked, of course. Inside, if you has anybody been, hopefully you guys, if you've been in Paris and at Montmartre, you've been in here. I was very excited to go the first time, and I sat there and had a glass of rosé in the afternoon with Amelie. There's a big picture of her in the background, but it takes its name, of course, from the two windmills, the Moulin Rouge and the Moulin de la Galette, which is down Rue Le Pic a bit. But I can't believe it's actually open. Maybe we could actually see see the picture of her in the very back. In 2001, when Jean-Pierre Jeunet directed the movie, he lived around here. So he actually used a lot of the locations around that he knew so well in where he loved. And so he picked this location, of course. There's, like I said, there's a big, huge picture of her in the back. You will go, when you do go in, you will notice that there is no longer the little cigarette booth in the front that was there. But in 2002, the person that had owned this sold it. So I think he was definitely trying to, hi Giuseppe. He definitely was trying to make a few bucks on the popularity of the business, and they tore it all out. The first time I went there, I was like, wait, this isn't, where's the cigarette booth? That must be the magic of Hollywood, but it was there. And they ended up taking it out. But it is, I mean, if you watch, when I was watching a little bit of it last night, I mean, it's exactly the same. There's not a lot different. They do capitalize definitely on the fact that it's Amelie. There's always people coming in there, but they're very smart because they basically will make you sit down and order something if you want to take some pictures. So they're pretty smart about that. It's not just come in, take some pictures and leave. But that's to the right there is where the cigarette counter was. That is no longer there, but it's pretty much looks the same. And the people there are really, really nice. Every time I've gone in there, they've always been very nice. But I can't tell if it's usually on that back wall. I can't tell. I'm sure this picture is still there of her. And it's nice to see it open, sort of, even though you can't sit down, it's still open. So that's good. Still draw some people up there to see them. Rue Le Pic is a funny street because in Paris, you could walk down a street and every 2 blocks, the name of the street changes. Rue Le Pic, actually, you will see, because we'll go up at the top, we'll take a right. It's Rue Le Pic till the top of this street, and then it goes to the left, and then it goes all the way around, and it goes up towards the backside of Sacré-Cœur, which is where we went on one of our very first videos we did. But it's interesting that they keep the name, even though the street literally changes direction a few times, but they keep it the same name. And this was one of the original paths up to Sacré-Cœur at one point. The candy store here to the left, this is one of my very favorites, the À la Mère de Famille. It's one of the oldest chocolate shops in Paris. This is not, the original one is on the Rue de Faubourg Montmartre. It was opened by Pierre Jean Bernard, and he ended up in 1761. He sold it in 1791 to Jean-Marie Berdaud, and it stayed in that family for 100 years. After that, it was sold to Georges Lecour, which is perfect, the heart. Brought it in 1895. And then when he was called up to go to the army, he ended up giving it to one of his most loyal apprentices, Regis Drouot. And it's when he died in 1931, his daughter took it over, and it's been in their family ever since. My grandmother, my 98-year-old grandmother, every time I'm in Paris, she's like, "What are you going to bring me back?" And I said, "Chocolate covered marzipan." She tells me this every single time. And she thinks that, I think that maybe when she was there, this must have been true. She thinks that every candy store and every corner in Paris sells chocolate covered marzipan, but they do not. But À la Mère de Famille does sell it, and it's absolutely delicious. I do have to wait and buy it just a day or two before I leave, because if I buy it too early, I just think that maybe just one little bite's good, and then next thing you know, a week later, it's gone. But it's their chocolate. They gave me a sample one time. I hadn't eaten any of their chocolate, and they gave me a sample, and I walked out the door and I was like, "Oh my God, this is so delicious." But it's so definitely go check it out. It's absolutely wonderful. And then we're going to take a left up here because Rue Le Pic takes a left. And we're going to go. This is a very adorable little corner here. I love this. I haven't been into this restaurant. that we're going to see in a second. There used to be this fantastic restaurant just up here to the right that now has a blue awning. It had been there over 100 years. I can't remember the name of it, but I stood out here and waited for about 45 minutes because, of course, it's Paris, and even if it says it opens at noon, it doesn't. So I waited for about 45 minutes on a sunny day. It used to be and it was very sad. It closed about a year ago after being open over 100 years and all in the same family, which is just heartbreaking. And this restaurant here, I have not been in the Basilique. It's absolutely adorable. I actually saw quite a few. I was trying to actually get some info about when it was open, but I actually wasn't able to find much. But I did see lots of really fantastic reviews for the restaurant, and it looks absolutely adorable inside. So it's pretty cute outside. And then we're just gonna walk up here a little bit, and then we're gonna turn around and go back. But there's a couple things coming up here at number 50. You had Mr. Edgar Degas. The restaurant, the really cute, adorable one is Le Basilique. I'll write afterwards. I put in the notes on the Facebook event. I'll put all of the places that I pointed out so that you could keep notes in case when you go back, when you go back, not if, but when you go back, you could go check some of these places out. But at number 50, Edgar Degas lived here for a very short period of time, only for a year in 1877. He lived around here a lot of the time. He actually had quite a few different studios. He moved around, but he lived here for 1 year in 1877. And then just a building apart from him separates him and another artist that we love. Look at how cute those little oval windows are on that building next to it. I wonder, I always think, did the people that live in, Edgar Degas' apartment, do they know they're living in Degas' apartment? I hope they do. And I hope they absolutely cherish that fact. That would just be amazing. That's what I always, every time I have an Airbnb, I always look up the history of it. And I'm just waiting for the day that it's going to be, this person, Eugène Delacroix lived here. That's where I would absolutely have a heart attack. But over here at number 54 is where Theo and Vincent van Gogh lived. Theo had moved to Paris. He was living in the French third floor apartment and in 1855. And Vincent decided he was going to come down to Paris, and it was a very tiny, very, very tiny apartment. And so Vincent decided to move down to Paris, and he came with, he brought with him all of his art supplies and moved into this building. And at first, I don't think Theo was too happy because it was a very small apartment. And, Vincent definitely had a few issues, so it was probably a little difficult. Their whole life, they shared so many letters to each other almost daily, but there's no letters, of course, during this period of time because they lived together. He painted the view from his window up here of down the street, which I will post in the Facebook event in 1877, looking out from the window. So it's pretty cool to see that is Krystal dancing over there? It's pretty cool to see, you could basically go through his eyes and see the view that he was looking at. But from here is where Vincent left here, and he went down to Arles in 1888. And we all know how that ended up working out. But that would be pretty amazing to live in the apartment. And then we'll just turn around and head back. Get Giuseppe walking backwards. Our master cameraman. Michelle, I haven't been down to Arles. I definitely need to go do that. With Coco leading our way too. We could just imagine Vincent and Degas walking down these streets. Oh, we have a Coco cameo here. He's probably so happy to be along with us. Usually he's just left in their apartment by himself. And this time he gets to come check out everything. I'm just happy to be here today too, because I woke up, well, yesterday, the night before, we lost power at about 11 p.m. and it was out until, luckily it came back on yesterday at about 2 in the afternoon. But the electrical system, when you called to report an outage, said that it was, it could be out until Monday morning. And I just about had a heart attack. So luckily it came back on today. We're supposed to get some more ice. We don't usually get a lot of weather like this. So we're supposed to get more ice, so keeping my fingers crossed we keep our power on. You don't still, does everybody do that when the power goes out? You just walk around and still go down the stairs and turn the lights on, or go into the bathroom and turn the light on, or then when the power comes back on, you have to go all over the place and turn all the lights off. And then I love that it tells you on the online system, we'll text you when it's on. It's like, oh, I'm going to know when it's on because the whole entire house is going to light up. But we're going to head down here. This is now where the Rue Le Pic actually turns into Rue des Abbesses. And it got its name. This is a street. A lot of people absolutely, some say it's their favorite street in Paris. I don't know, nothing could top my Rue de l'Odéon. But this Rue des Abbesses got its name because it was this entire portion from below Sacré-Cœur down to here was covered with an abbey. And there was a lot of churches up here. Oh, sweet little Coco. There was a lot of churches up here. And in 1133, Louis VI, who was known as Louis the Fat, which some of the kings, they had these names, or some of them was basically like, one of them was like the stupid. It's just kind of heartbreaking. I don't think they needed to be called those things, but so Louis VI, his wife had asked him to build an abbey up here. And so he did. And, up above there was the Saint-Pierre Church, which is still there, that it's right behind Sacré-Cœur, that we walked by in one of the first tours. And I can't wait till hopefully we could get inside and show that to you, because it's got some pretty fantastic stuff inside of it. But they built this up here. Originally, there was a chapel, a 7th century chapel that stood until 1096. It was the Saint Martin des Champs Priory, and eventually it changed into a cemetery. But Louis VI's wife, Adelaide de Savoy, she was very devout and asked her husband to create this convent for the women. And a quick swap with the monks, they gave the monks a different church somewhere else. And so they took over this land and built a abbey that extended down this side of the Montmartre. It sits between the church, the Église Saint-Pierre de Montmartre, which I just mentioned, and then a small chapel dedicated to Saint Denis, which is where we're going to show you the outside of in a little bit. But Pope Innocent II consecrated the abbey in October of 1136, and over time, 46 different nuns were named the abbess. That's basically you're the chief lady, you're the head of the nuns. They had over 600 women that lived here as well. At first, they were named by the church, but eventually in 1548, they were appointed by the king. So the king of France at that time was Henry II. He named Catherine de Clermont, who was also the niece of his lover, Diane de Poitiers. It was another fascinating figure that we did an episode on. I think it's already been released, or it's coming. It might be coming soon. Oh, it's coming the next week, next Monday. She was really fascinating. If you have heard any of the stuff about Catherine de Medici and Diane, it's a pretty amazing story. More and more restaurants in Paris add these. It's like the one down in Rue de Bussy where they add all those pretty flowers and stuff on top of it. This is usually a much Instagrammed restaurant right here. I'm sure a lot of you have seen that on Instagram. but so there was a fire in 1559 that destroyed a lot of the abbey, located at the very top. The small church Saint Pierre had stayed. So in 1611, Marie de Bouvy was appointed by Henry IV to take over rebuilding the abbey. And so she took over after her sister Claude, who was the 37th abbess. Claude in 1590, during Henry IV's siege of Paris, he ended up coming up there, and he was staying with a bunch of his soldiers up here in the abbess, and he and Claude had a little thing. So I don't think that's something nuns could do now, but apparently the rules might have been a little looser then. But she became one of the mistresses of Henry IV. They spent a lot of time together. This was in between after he was almost his marriage was getting annulled with Margaret, his first wife. He ended up taking Claude with him around Paris to on different crusades he was doing. And while he was there, he met Gabrielle d'Astries, who, if this afternoon at 10 a.m. Pacific time, I'm going to do another video. It's supposed to be yesterday, but the power didn't help. I'm going to do another video about love in the Louvre, all the different paintings that kind of depict all different kinds of love. And there's a very famous painting of Gabrielle there. But many of the nuns entertained many of the soldiers. And at the time, it was the abbey was nicknamed the store of the whores of the army. So that's, I think definitely, I think they've clamped down on what nuns could do since then, because I don't think that's something that they, like I said, I didn't go to Catholic school or raised in the Catholic Church, but I'm pretty sure from what I've done research on, that's not something they get to do. But this church that's right here, this is a really cool church, the Saint-Jean de Montmartre. In 1892, Anatole de Bordeaux, who studied under Viollet-le-Duc, he ended up wanting to build a church that was created out of concrete. At the time, the abbot Sobo, who grew up he grew up at Montmartre, and he wanted, after the fire, a lot of the stuff wasn't completely rebuilt. And so he thought that area needed a church, as it is down the hill from Sacré-Cœur. And so he ended up working with Anatole to create this church. And so he had this great idea, to create it out of concrete. Well, Anatole had gone to the higher ups, the diocese, and they were like, no, we just don't, we don't like this idea. This isn't going to work. And so he decided, using his own money and raising a lot of other money, that he would just take this on his own. So it was basically, it's called the conscient system. It's cement that's reinforced with stiffening rods in the concrete, and then it's covered with brick. So the facade and the walls is all concrete, but once inside the church, they use stone and a lot of other things. Oh, look, there's a little snow left right there. So in 1900, when it was almost complete, except for the bell tower and the facade, on May 23rd, 1900, the diocese took Abbot Sobo to court, saying that he didn't provide the plans. He didn't give them, he basically just did this on his own, and they were ticked off about it. So they took him to court, not to church, took him to court and tried to sue him. But he was saved for a short period of time by the Dreyfus Affair. When the Dreyfus Affair happened in Paris, Captain Dreyfus was given amnesty. And in a clause, in the amnesty clause, other people could jump on and get amnesty as well. And so the abbot actually was one of the ones that was lucky enough to do that. And he was given amnesty, but it didn't last very long. A year later, in 1901, a new judgment was put against him. The church was closed for a period of time. But then he ended up winning that as well. The Ministry of the Public de Beaux-Arts decided against Paris City Hall, and decided that he could finish it and complete it. And it was finally finished in 1906. And in 1908, the Archbishop finally named him priest of the parish. But inside, it's really cool. There's a lot of iron work on the inside.
It's
This
industrial.
is, it's not a very old church when you think of churches in Paris, that's for sure. It's started the 1900s, but there's some really neat stained glass in the church as well. It's very modern compared to the Gothic structures that you see. But he did study under Viollet-le-Duc, who of course was the man that restored Notre Dame. On the facade, we saw a little bit of, there's some ceramics on the facade. Those were all done by Alexander Bigot, who you might also know from the famous building on Avenue Rapp, by Jules Lavireau, who has the building that everybody takes pictures of. But if you look a little bit closer, it's a rather erotic, there's a lot of erotic symbolism in it, which cracks me up when everybody's like, oh, this is so great. I'm like, look a little bit closer at it. So I should share that story of that on my Instagram again, but once you see it, you never unsee it again. But he did a lot of the ceramics on that building, and he was asked to do the ceramics on this one. You have also the beautiful tile mosaic on the altar, and all of that really beautiful wood and iron that they have inside. It's a very quiet church. When I've gone in there, usually there's not really a lot of people in there. One or two people come into people don't really. Anytime I walk by a church, I always have to go in and check it out. You never know. Some of them actually have really great little books that you could even buy about the history of the church. Some of them even just have little pamphlets. This one actually had a couple different pamphlets about the architect and the creation of the church, which I was excited. I every time I come back, I probably come back with about 10 pounds of papers that I collect in the churches and everywhere else I go. But then I have come home and I put them in a file, and then when I do things like this, I'm so glad I have them, because it's some of these smaller churches, it's you won't find information about them on the internet. It's very, very difficult, but I'm trying to share as many of these small ones that people don't know as well as possible, so that when you guys go back, you go in there and check it out and know all the great things that you're looking at. Giuseppe, our man on the camera, Giuseppe, he loves art too, just like me. And Krystal always laughs that when I'm in Paris, he and I are going to go to the museums together, and we'll be gone for days because we will stop and look at every single thing and read every single thing. That's how I do museums, and I'll be there for hours and hours. So most people tell me that they would never want to go with me to a museum because I do take so much time, but it is definitely the one thing that I miss over a lot of things in Paris, is just being able to walk through the museums. But there's some beautiful art in here, some statues, the frescoes on the walls, with a lot of them will be the different, what is it called? The stages of the cross. I'm still just astounded how people did this, carve these kinds of things so long ago. Yeah, look at those great chandeliers. When I came in here one day, one of the the nuns that was working at the church saw me stopping and looking at everything and taking pictures of everything, and came up and that happens to me quite often, is people see that and then they'll come up and ask me, because they say they don't see people do that. Most people just kind of walk in and walk out. And I've ended up having some pretty fantastic conversations and found out some great things in able to talk to them, just because you just take a little bit of time. It's hard because a lot of people don't have a lot of time when they go to Paris. And I realize that I'm very lucky how much time I have, that I could take the time to do that, but just slow down just a tiny little bit. You'll be amazed what you might come across. So yeah, over there where all those pamphlets are, that's what, always check those things out. They have all these great panels up too at the history of the church. I think I took a picture of every single one of those. And then you could always buy a coin. The city of Paris makes those coins that you could collect, which I did at first. Every time I saw one, I would always buy them, but then they got pretty heavy, and then I don't know what I'm doing with them. They're just sitting in a bowl. But it's a really neat church, just there right off the Place des Abbesses. Oh, look at little fishies. My friend Landon posted a video on Instagram today where you could hear the birdies chirping in Paris, and I was so excited because we're getting close to spring, even though have snow and ice. We are getting close. Every day we get closer and closer to more light and springtime. And then we're gonna go back out, and then we have another church. I don't think we could go inside of it, but we do have another church to show you the outside, because something pretty amazing actually happened at that very location that we will share. Does anybody else, when they go to Paris, go into every single church they could find to come across? That's one thing. It's, the churches, many of the churches, at least where I am, they don't look like this. So yeah, Michelle, they're pretty, they were basically, the churches were the first museums, because that's where, the churches are the ones that had all the money. So, they would commission these famous artists like Charles Lebrun and Delacroix to paint for them. And so now I did an article a few years ago on Bonjour Paris that was basically how you could see some of the best art in Paris, and for free. And because that's where they were. There was, before there was museums, there was churches, and that's where you got to see a lot of the art, which a lot of it still remains in the churches. Of course, some of the really precious things have moved, and they're in the Louvre, and other churches around Paris, especially Notre Dame and the Maze. I had a huge obsession with the Maze paintings that were in Notre Dame, and at a few of the other churches that were given to Notre Dame every year on May 1st and put on display. Notre Dame still had, I think it was 14 of them. All of them are perfectly intact because they were in all the side chapels. So none of them were damaged by any of the water or anything that, any of the soot or anything. They were already, one of the things, and when we walked around Notre Dame a couple of weeks ago, that they had discovered was a lot of the stained glass, because they were so dusty and dirty from years and years of not being clean, that dust and that all protected it. So it protected it from the lead that came down when it was melting off the roof. So a lot of that lead, the dust protected it. And same thing with the paintings. So I guess that's a good reason you could just say why you don't want to dust or clean at home. You're just protecting things. But we are now just walking down this this little street. It's called Rue Yvon Le Tac. It was originally called Rue Marie Antoinette, and it's not because of that very famous Marie that we know of. It was the wife of the owner at the time. It was later changed to just Rue Antoinette. They were trying to distance themselves from Marie. But I still think Antoinette, you still know who she is. But over here on the right at number 11, it's very, you'd probably walk right past it. This church that's right here, it's the Crypt de Martyrdom of Saint Denis. And if hopefully you all know the story of Saint Denis, it's one of kind of my favorite tales of Paris. Saint Denis was the first bishop of Paris. He came to France and he started converting everybody, and the other church elders didn't really like it because he was very successful in converting a lot of people to Christianity. And so they basically called for his death. They arrested him and two of his other priests with him, and he was convicted and he was sentenced to death. Most of the story that usually everybody tells is that he was killed at the top of Montmartre, but he was actually killed right here. So this is, you see Saint Geneviève written there. It was, she had a chapel built dedicated to Saint Denis, a Saint Rustique and Saint Eleuthère, not sure, I'm sure I'm not saying that right. Those were his other priests that were with him. This is where they were actually beheaded. So this is where he was when he picked up his head and kept on walking and walked his long way to what we know as the city of Saint Denis now, where the basilique is. But on July 11, 1611, during some reconstruction, because this was all originally part of where the abbey was, they found a staircase that basically they didn't know was there, that had been during the fire, a lot of the stone had fallen into. So they found this staircase, they went down there, and there was a crypt there. And in the crypt there was a stone, a bas-relief stone that depicted the beheading of Saint Denis. And so it ended up becoming this huge thing because they had discovered where he had died and marked it. This building to the right has this really cool door on it that's really pretty. This was, if you ended up reading our book of the month club last month for La Vie Creative, we read a book about Victorine, and Valtesse, sorry, she was a courtesan in Paris, and she had a long love affair with painter Henri Garot. He was an artist. He lived here in 1852. He did this beautiful, beautiful painting called Rolla. And of course, it caused a huge controversy in Paris because it is a painting of a woman naked, laying in bed with one leg on the floor. There's a man that looks like he had probably, just had put his clothes back on. His shirt wasn't completely buttoned up, but it caused this huge, huge sensation. I'll post a picture of it. It's really beautiful. It's actually at a museum in Bordeaux, but 2 years ago, it was at the Orsay for a special exhibit. It's a really beautiful painting, but Gervaux lived there for a short period of time. He was involved with Valtesse for quite a few years and painted her as well. He painted her in the City Hall in the 19th. He was commissioned to do a painting, and he painted it up on the wall. And this is, in the marriage hall. And he depicted, basically, he turned the hall in this great big fresco into a church, and then he made his lover Valtesse the bride, and then she's turned and looking at you. It again, of course, caused a controversy because here, it's the city hall is not a church. They shouldn't be considered close to each other. And here is the bride that's also a courtesan, but it's still there. And then this cute little square here, we're going to go over here, the Metro Abbesse. This is a very famous entryway. Of course, Hector Guimond had done quite a few of these that went all over Paris. This is one of the only two that are the original ones in Paris. This was originally down at Hotel de Ville. It was moved up here in 1974. He did a couple different styles. This is only the second one of this style that remains in Paris. It's the original one. There's quite a few of them that they've thankfully copied. At one point, they were going to take them all down, but luckily, some citizens got pretty upset with that, and so we are all very thankful because they are pretty stunning to look at. But it moved up here in 1974 from Hotel de Ville. Down in the center of Paris. I was back, in the winter time, they have a little celebration in here for scallops. So it's that period of time up there, the Coquille Saint-Jacques. And so they have it's really cute. They have a bunch of food booths and stuff set up around here. It was also, I was walking and there was a sausage maker, and that is where they were handing out, is it andouille? And I had a bite of that and I got rid of it as fast as I could, because that is, if you know what it is, it's definitely an acquired taste. French people love it. Yeah, check it out. It's actually like, it's sausage. It's made out of like the pig intestines, I think. I don't know. It was not I was like, nope. And then we're going into this adorable little square here that a lot of people are going to recognize. And perfect for today, for Valentine's Day, to show on this day of love, which every day should be. But today, for this little day of love, we're going through this square. At one point, this was actually where the City Hall of the 18th actually stood, and they took it down. But we're just down below Sacré-Cœur. We're not that far from it at this point, we kept going around. But the Le Mur de Je t'aime is the I love you wall, of course. It was created in the year 2000, but the story goes back a little bit farther than that. Happy Valentine's to you, Carol. It goes back to 1992, when a man named Frederick Barron would wander the streets of Paris. And anytime he saw anybody of a different nationality, he would ask them, how do you say I love you in your language? Oh, there's somebody selling some roses, of course. He would ask them, how do you say I love you? And he would write these he kept track of them. Well, after a while, he accumulated so many of them, and he ended up telling a friend of his, it's a calligrapher named Claire Quito, about it. And she actually said that we should actually do something with this. So he, I think the I love you in English is kind of right around here too. So she said we should do something with this. He had I love you in over 250 languages and 311 phrases. So he ended up talking with Claire, and then he talked to a friend of his that was a muralist named Daniel Boulon, and they decided to put these all together and create this wall. And so each of the tiles, these really beautiful royal blue color tiles, are the same size as his notebook. And so they ended up putting these all together. It was installed in the year 2000. You could see all the little red pieces in there. Those are pieces of a broken heart. And if you put them all together, it would make a heart. So I think it's really beautiful that amongst all the I love yous, there's these little pieces of a heart. But when you put them all together, it's a whole heart. But it was put together in 2000. He ended up in 1996, ended up publishing a book with all of the phrases in there. It's always fun to go by here and you see everybody pointing out, looking for their language of I love you. But I love the color of the tile. The color of the tiles are so pretty. but there's always a lot of people there. And I'm sure especially today. How does Coco say I love you? Just a few. Is dog written up there on the wall? But hopefully you guys have all gone past that and come by here and seen that, with your loved one or even on your own. The year 2000 had quite a few different, they put this up, they had built if you go around the Place de la Concorde and you look far out, you see Roman numerals because they had turned the obelisk into a sundial. They also, 2000 was also the year that they made the amazing metro stop that's over there at the Place Colette with all the Murano glass. Oh, merci. What a gentleman. But 2000 was a year they put a lot of new things in Paris. And I don't think people were mad about the "I love you" wall. They usually don't like a lot of new fancy, new modern things, but I don't think people were upset about the "I love you" wall, so you have that great church. Look at the top of that church, it's so pretty. There is there's a little garden back there that in a school. So when I was in there, you could hear all the children outside playing. But there is like a little secret garden back there for the people of the church. That if you're lucky, you could kind of pretend you don't know where you're going. That's where I use the "I'm an American, I don't know where I am" kind of oopsie. But we're gonna head over. We're gonna go one more little, show you one more little thing of from our wonderful movie Amelie. I was at my very favorite place one night, Le Vent Comtois de la Terre, of course. And I saw there was a man in there, and I was like, "Gosh, he looks so familiar. He just looks so familiar." It was driving me crazy. And I was talking to him for a little bit because he knew my friends at work there. And he was I realized long after I had left that he was the love interest of Amelie in the movie. But forever I was like, why does he look so familiar? I can't figure out why he looks so familiar. We're going down right now. This is the Passage des Abbesses. This little, I actually have never walked down this street. So Giuseppe's taking us. And our sweet little Coco. This street actually was originally the Passage de la Carre. It was renamed after it was finished and met up with the Rue des Abbesses in 1873. They ended up putting it all the way through. So it used to just be these stairs and that was it. But at the very top of it, oh, look. Oh, is that the backside of the Love? Yes, it is. Those plaques are always great. Always, if you could read French, always stop and take a look at those or take a picture and translate them later. They always have a little, some always interesting info. Oh. Thank you, Giuseppe. Maybe this is where Henry IV and his, see, Louis the Sixth Le Gros, so Louis the Fat. Poor guy. Yeah, it was one that was like, I can't remember which one it was, but he was called the dim or basically the stupid, which is not very nice. Of course, Louis the 14th was Louis the Grand. And then that was the last one. They didn't have any pet names for them after that. Coco is patiently waiting for us. Did Coco get some chocolate today? I hope so. Oh, there we have a hand grenade that looks also like a heart. And some kitty cats. And then up here, all of you Amelie fans will definitely notice this location, Le Marché, Le Bout Moment. This was, of course, you will definitely recognize this from the movie. It was the Musée Collion in Amelie, and the owner kept basically he kept a sign above it. He kept everything that they had done in production to fancy up his stall and the names, and he's pretty smart to do that because a lot of people will. I've had somebody stop me on the street, ask me where this was. So people are definitely looking for it. So he ended up marking it and capitalizing on that like a smart guy would. He ended also decided to take his fame and people coming by and started to record albums of classic French tunes. Oh, there's Amelie right there. It is actually when I was watching it, he's a very well, he's of course in the movie, but he's also a very famous French actor. He it's actually it starts out. I was kind of forgetting how kind of just sad the movie is, especially at the beginning of it. But all filmed up here in his the filmmaker did this all up here in his basically his backyard 20 years ago. I can't believe the movie's 20 years old. But of course, he he was smart. He put it everywhere. Here she is again. But it is fun. It is always fun to walk around and find those places in movies that you love. It's always kind of fun to see where they were filmed. And it is kind of neat that he ended up kind of keeping the changes they did. Because sometimes, like when you went to the cafe below and you were like, wait, where's the cigarette counter? Where's this? Where's that? And then you realize, so it's kind of fun when they keep it the way they had it from the movie. And of course, Audrey, she was also one of my favorites, the Da Vinci Code, because again, that's filmed in Paris and in the Louvre. Well, they didn't let them film it actually in the Louvre, but so that's always exciting. And that was kind of our last little stop on our little, oh, there we have some, oh, I thought those were hearts. But on these sweet little streets up here in the cobblestones of Montmartre. Giuseppe, and they'll show us where, of course, right here, if you go right here, on our very, very first tour that we ever did, this is, of course, where the Bateau Lavoir is. Where we were having all sorts of technical issues that time on our very first one, which we thankfully have gotten all figured out after, I think we've been doing this for like 3 months now. So we are so thankful for everybody that joins us on Sunday so we could share a little bit of Paris with you that we all desperately miss. It's always fun. It's always fun to discover all this history and to share it with you guys. I absolutely, that's my favorite thing is just all the French history and things that you, and hopefully when you guys go back, you could walk down the street and be like, hey, wait, I know this place, or I've seen this, or Claudine told me about this. And so if it could just enrich your little trip to Paris even more than that, I love that. And the Bateau Lavoir, of course, where Picasso was, and we did that. Actually, I think I actually have that very first one, even with our technical issues. I believe it's on my Instagram, or I'm sorry, not my Instagram, my YouTube page, which I will link to that so you guys could see where we walked here and we saw where Dalida lived, the fantastic Bateau Lavoir, which unfortunately had a big fire because it wasn't built very well. Oh, and there we have the fire. It was later rebuilt, and there's actually artists that live there now inside. So they are, there's still artists there today. I'm sure it's a lot more expensive than back in the day when Picasso and all those guys hung out there, but it's still pretty cool. So. For some reason, we can't hear them today. Oh, Coco. Well, he can't hear me, I guess. Thank you so much, Giuseppe and Krystal.
Thank you, Claudine.
And happy Valentine's Day, and love you. And if you want some more love, because yesterday I didn't have any power, I had to move my video, Love in the Louvre, from yesterday to today at 10 a.m. And so I'm going to take you through 14 of my favorite pieces in the Louvre that all have a story of love. So check that out on my Bleu Blanc Rouge Facebook page. And she's not cooperating with you, Giuseppe.
Stay here.
Half a heart. But thank you guys all so much for joining us, and we can't wait to take you next week. I think next week we're going to go over to the 5th and go up around Mont Saint-Geneviève, and one of my favorite churches over there, Saint Etienne du Mont, in that area. And so I think we're going to go there. I think Krystal's embarrassed. But thank you guys all so much, and thanks for joining us, and we can't wait to see you next weekend, and maybe even in a couple hours. I hope to see you over on my Louvre chat, and we love you, and thank you guys all for joining us, and have a wonderful and fantastic Valentine's Day, and drink lots of champagne.
That's a good idea.
Thank you all. Merci.
Thank you.